You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
From Mamamia, I'm Kate Langbroek, and you're listening to No Filter. Some people like to get married and have kids, or even not have kids, but the idea is generally you stay with that one person for the rest of your lives. That's pretty traditional, but divorce is also extremely common. And then there's something else on the rise: open relationships.
Although some may consider it a controversial topic, open relationships are fast becoming less taboo than maybe they once were.
It seems more and more couples are having those conversations and finding a relationship agreement that works best for them.
And within that, some people enjoy their partner being with other people. They may even like watching. That is not me at all, but I am fascinated by that world. I have so many questions. The people you're about to hear from, their names are Liam and Abbey, are very, very happy.
All of our monogamous friends were kind of unsurprised when we told them. They go, oh, well, we were trying to figure out why you are so happy all the time.
When they walked into the No Filter studio, they literally looked like they were glowing with long hair and beautiful skin and big smiles. So is having sex with other people the key to a happy marriage? You're about to find out. Abbey and Liam have been together for 12 years and have slept with other people for the majority of that time. But it can't all be smooth sailing, right? Do they get jealous? I'd get jealous. What are their boundaries? What does their dating schedule look like, and their home life? And what the hell is compersion? I learnt so much from this chat. Abbey and Liam told me about their first time with another person and where they went from there. It's all incredibly complicated, but to them, it's pretty simple. Here are Abbey and Liam. Well, it's a good thing that this interview series is called No Filter, because the filter is really coming off on this discussion that we have to have. I am joined by Abbey and Liam. Welcome to No Filter, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
You, of course, have come to, well, I'm going to say national attention recently because of your interesting lifestyle choice.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you describe that lifestyle choice?
I would describe our lifestyle choice or our relationship as we're in a non-monogamous, open relationship. We've been together for 12 years and we've been non-monogamous for 10 of those years. And for Liam and I, it's been a really interesting journey of shifting and changing and growing together and really sort of carving a relationship that can look a little bit different to most relationships.
Do you reckon?
Well, yes, definitely. But actually sort of crafting and creating a relationship that works really well for us as individuals, which is really important for us. It is a little bit different, but it works really well for us and it's a journey.
Tell me, Liam, how you guys met.
We actually met in Canberra.
Right.
So we were both studying at university and I had a band at the time and I was playing a gig at a venue. I saw this beautiful woman in the audience and I said, oh, I'm definitely going to talk to her after the gig finishes. And suddenly the gig finishes and Abbey has disappeared. So luckily for me, Abbey reached out and said, oh, I really loved your band. That's kind of our origin meeting story. And from there, we fell kind of deeply and madly in love.
Yeah, we met before Tinder and all of these online ways of meeting people. So we have quite a sweet meet cute story. But it's really interesting because, you know, I did reach out to Liam through Facebook. Facebook was happening then. We went for a coffee date a week after and we've really been very sort of inseparable ever since and a very close connected couple.
Your origins were very traditional in that sense then.
Yes, we did come from an understanding of romantic relationships as being, you know, the monogamous story. And of course with, the media that we grow up, listening to, or Disney movies that we watch, and the examples that we had in our life with our parents and grandparents, and those stories were all monogamous stories. So we definitely feel like we were veering off the track when we started, talking about our love and the future and our connection to each other and what a relationship could look like for us.
So you guys then moved to New York together.
We did. We moved to New York in 2013. And actually reflecting upon that, I do believe that sort of being away from home, being away from Canberra and being in this new city, making new friends and sort of establishing ourselves as our own people away from these previous versions of ourselves, we sort of were able to, reinvent ourselves.
Right.
And, it is a very diverse city. There's a lot happening. There were different, events that we were going to. There's, the art over there is very expressive. There's a lot of freedom in a city like New York. So I think that definitely had an impact on us.
What work were both of you doing at the time?
Creative work.
Yeah. So I'm a musician.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were over there mainly for Liam's music at that time.
At that point, so it was like 2 years into your relationship roughly, was it a conversation about opening up your relationship?
We were having these deep conversations about love and, of course, sexuality, and we've always wanted to have a relationship where we could talk about absolutely anything. That is totally crucial for us. And so with that came conversations around, certain desires that were coming up or certain interests. For me, I was starting to have these feelings of, actually one of the things that I find incredibly attractive is for Liam to also have, his own sort of independence or having a bit of sense of space between the two of us in a way while still being connected.
Were you thinking sexually at that point, or was it more in terms of your connection as a relationship?
I was thinking more sexually at that point. That was really interesting. And I didn't realize at the time, but the feelings that were coming up for me were actually these feelings of, it's a term in the polyamorous, non-monogamous community, a word called compersion. So it's actually this feeling of like happiness or intrigue or, pleasure at the thought of him actually being with somebody else.
Right.
And that's very in contrast to, these romantic storylines that we grow up learning about. We sort of only hear about the other side of this, which is the jealousy. There's a lot of jealousy, or the other woman or the mistress, or, there's all of that. And so, it was really interesting because I didn't have the language around it. I didn't really understand what was happening, but it was something that was really coming up for me. And then when we started to talk about that, I was like, I'm actually really intrigued by this, and it's going against the narrative of everything that I've ever learned a relationship should be. But, I feel really safe and secure with you, and I'd actually like to, explore this, at least initially in a conversational sense, to not rush into anything,
So the thing that you say about language is really interesting because it's impossible almost to discuss your situation without using terms like normal, or do you know what I mean? Because it's so counter to what, as you say, we're used to. But Liam, so when Abbey flagged these feelings with you, what's the term again?
Compersion.
Yes. And of course you didn't know that term then.
No, we didn't. I was amazed I felt a very similar sense of compersion as well. So we kind of started to introduce these ideas into, just casual conversation or pillow talk essentially. And I started to realize, this is something that I feel really strongly as well. And we had this beautiful meeting of kind of these shared kind of interests that we were able to initially just explore just in theory. We weren't actually going out on acting on any of these kind of impulses. But what we were able to do was create this foundation of beautiful possibilities for exploration.
Right. And then what happens next? So you've both expressed this desire, which seems to be, am I right in thinking that it wasn't more oriented about yourself, but it was about the other person? So Abbey, you wanted to see Liam get on the bang bus with someone else. Is that right? So not so much about yourself.
That's a really interesting point. Look, I've never heard of this bang bus, but if you do
sounds
know
exciting.
of one, let us know, because I'm sure some of the people that follow my writing might be interested in a bang bus. But it is really interesting, and I think it really goes against some of these stereotypes that we think of when we think of non-monogamous relationships. We often, the first thing that can come to mind, or what would come to mind before I sort of knew anything about this world, was I would think, something must be wrong with the relationship, or this is happening because one person, they're not getting what they need, and so they want to go and be with other people. Like, it's sort of coming from a self place, or I don't want to say a selfish place, because of course in relationships we do have many different needs and desires and all of that. But, for us, the way that we were able to engage with this in a way where we weren't diminishing what we already had between us, it was like, this is, actually seeing you in your own sexual expression and not trying to own your sexual, each other's sexual expression, but, encourage it and, be each other's, cheerleader in ways, was actually like a very beautiful and, sometimes quite erotic way of just being in a relationship.
Often an erotic way.
Yeah, often an erotic way.
You would assume it was erotic. Or
Yeah, exactly.
Stay with us, because Liam and Abbey tell me about their first threesome. It was kind of spontaneous, so there wasn't much time to set up.
You ladies, you go and get a drink at a nearby bar. I've never run around a supermarket faster than buying every single candle and then setting up the apartment, the best that I could, and then sending Abby a message going, okay, I think this is the moment.
And they don't just sleep with other people, they date them too. So then what happens? So you've had that conversation, you're both on the same page. How do you take it out of the world of just the two of you, where you start entering the world and bringing other people in? Like, that must have been such a significant moment.
It was, and I think what we entered it very delicately, and I think we were really fortunate in that we were living in a city like New York City, because there are different sort of events and gatherings, or even immersive art performances that are quite sort of sexual in nature, or, the energy of the space is quite sexual. So we were able to, go into those types of environments and just like chat with other people, and just like really subtle things like being at a gathering and then, we kind of split off from each other for a little bit and sort of watch each other from different sides of the room, or chatting with people and sort of actually really being aware of like what's coming up in that moment. Just because we're non-monogamous doesn't mean that we don't ever have any feelings of jealousy, or that we don't have, these normal human emotions that come up. So, those environments do tend to attract like-minded people as well. So we would sort of meet people quite organically.
And at this point, are you both moving forward into these new people and these new spaces? Are you moving together at the same time, or was it more a staggered kind of thing?
Yeah, for us, I think we were both moving into it at the same time. So we really kind of sought out these beautiful experiences together, because we felt comfort in kind of having each other along for the ride with those experiences. And also, it was so exciting to kind of have this partner in crime. We might go out to a bar and go, oh, look at that cute girl over there. Like, isn't she beautiful? And we'd be able to talk. And that kind of really added to the sense of not only eroticism to be able to talk about these things, but also the sense of security. We were kind of dipping our toes into the waters of non-monogamy. We weren't necessarily jumping in the deep end.
Sure. But still, that first time must have had its own sort of challenges. Like, how do you actually work out, or did it happen in an organic way? Was it one person, or did you both meet people that you both liked? Like, just the logistics of it. Even two people just getting together in this world is a miracle.
The first time that we ever actually, physically had a non-monogamous experience together was actually with a work colleague of mine who was actually on her way out from leaving that job. So it felt like quite a safe space.
Right.
We weren't going to be
bump into
at
each
work.
other at the microwave.
Exactly. We weren't going to be at the water fountain, awkwardly for the next few years. And it was really interesting because she didn't know that we were thinking about non-monogamy, but she actually approached me. She was already somebody who was in that non-monogamous space, and she actually sort of picked up on some sort of non-monogamous vibe I must have been giving out. She actually approached me, and to join us. And, I said, we've never done anything like this before. It's funny that you have asked because we've been talking about it for many, many months. And and she was wonderful. She was like, well, if you're ever interested, we can talk about it. I want to go at your pace, like only if you guys are interested in me as well. I don't want to overstep. I'm not trying to join your relationship, all of these things. And I was thinking, okay, this actually sounds really good because, of course, when you're navigating relationships with multiple people, this isn't just about Liam and I and our boundaries or what we're looking for in a relationship. This is actually about being considerate to every single person or anyone who is connecting with us and making sure that, we don't want to be leading anybody else on in that way. At that point, we're not having people join our relationship and sort of, anchoring themselves as we're not looking for a throuple.
Yeah, right.
At that stage. It was more like the experience and being in that moment and having that connection in that moment with somebody. And maybe that moment.
So did you come home from work and say to Liam, Debbie's in, right? Do you know, because presumably there has to be a degree of attraction as well. Liam obviously knew your work colleague as well.
Yes, yeah. So we all kind of knew each other, and it actually happened. So we'd had all these beautiful conversations kind of leading up to, all the different kind of permutations of what could be like a really exciting thing to happen. And then it actually happened really organically. We're all kind of at a bar in the Lower East Side together. And then this was kind of broached if this is a vibe for you guys, maybe we could do this right now.
Right,
and
right. In the bar?
I remember thinking.
In the bar?
Not in the bar.
No, not in the bar. But we had this kind of conversation where she went off to the bathroom. She said, look, this could be an option. Like, this could be really exciting. You guys just have a little chat about it and I'll come back in a second. And I remember just looking at Abbey in the bar thinking, this is it. Oh my God, is this the moment?
And then it was quite hilarious because it was so impromptu. We were like, well, our apartment's not ready for this. We didn't clean the apartment. What's going to happen?
You haven't scattered the rose petals and lit the candles.
I know, exactly. But it is a really hilarious story.
Yeah,
Do you want to share?
Because what happened was we knew that the apartment wasn't ready, but we had to go back to our apartment. So we head back to the Air and I say, you ladies, you go and get a drink at a nearby bar. And we had a supermarket that was just across the road from us. And I've never run around a supermarket faster than buying every single candle that I could possibly grab.
It was candles. It's always candles.
It's always candles, Kate. It's always candles. And then setting up the apartment, the best that I could, and then sending Abbey a message going, okay, I think this is the moment.
Yeah. And it was great because it gave her and I an opportunity to really nut out everything and just, because we did have boundaries. It wasn't like we were, having this threesome where it was like everything was a complete free-for-all. This was our first time. Right. So it was sort of a very sort of a gentle easing in
and you are
to the dynamic.
Entering uncharted waters. Like monogamy is very straightforward, possibly hard to execute in the course of lifetimes, but on paper it's a sentence. You eschew all others, right? But what you're doing from that point onward, I imagine, is fraught with possible complications and you need to invent your own parameters. You said you had your boundaries. What were the boundaries that you had in place then?
At that time, what felt comfortable for me was for us to be in this sexual space together, but to not sort of go to the full length of all of, the possibilities of sexual acts. So, it was a pretty light on experience, all sort of being together, being nude, kissing, those things, but not going all the way, going to a certain point. And she was really respectful of that. She was like, that's wonderful. We're going to have a great time. And we were just really fortunate that we actually there weren't really any issues with that because we had discussed those boundaries. But, it was really interesting, Kate, because as the night went on and I'd had these boundaries that I really wanted to stick to, as the night went on and I was feeling so comfortable, I actually wanted to stretch on those boundaries as well.
Okay, yes. Because in the heat of the moment as well.
Yes.
Did Liam pull you up on the boundaries? Was
Liam's amazing
speed
at that.
bump here?
I take great pride in being the speed bump because for me, I knew that this could be a possibility of happening. And I think within that moment, of course, the excitement can overtake me as well. One of the best things I did, I think, was to actually say, look, we'd actually previously discussed what we're comfortable with. I think, this isn't going to be our only rodeo. There might be plenty of others. So I think it's really important just to kind of respect those boundaries, and then we can revisit that in the future. And of course, that's what we've done, and it's such an important thing to really respect those.
That was really amazing the way that you did that, because it actually it made me feel very safe in that my boundaries were respected, even in the moment where I myself wanted to potentially break my own boundaries. Like Liam has got me. So that actually built into the trust that we have.
So you renegotiate your trust every time, and when the person rises to meet you, then you can go on to the next stage. And what was the next stage after that?
Well, I would say from that experience, then we're quite curious people by our nature. We're interested in, what's going on with people in this relationship space. And of course, being in New York City, there's so much happening, and there is a really amazing and thriving sex party scene and, big events happening. And so we went and explored that. Sometimes we just went to watch and to sort of see what was happening. Along the way, we made amazing friends, and we would go with them and, have a really nice network of non-monogamous friends along the way. But yeah, it's been a really interesting journey of opening up, and then also exploring separately as well. So, the separate dating happened around 2016.
Which was like 4 years after you first got together.
Yes.
Right. And when you say separate dating, what form does that take?
It's interesting because kind of the initial explorations that we had were with women. And something that I was really interested in was Abbey kind of also having her own ability to express her sexuality and her sexual autonomy with other men as well. And that was something that I was really interested in her kind of exploring. We also had experiences before we did the separate dating. We did have experiences with men, whether they were, threesomes. And I'm straight myself, but, I love being in that sexual environment and that sexual energy. So that was something that we also started exploring kind of just before we started to have separate dating as well.
And then the separate dating thing, you meet someone together, or you've met them just as yourself without the context of, say, Liam and Abbey?
Yeah, so we actually met somebody together, and it was actually through another friend of ours in the non-monogamous scene who connected us with him when I felt ready to start dating, and it was something that I was really interested in but a little bit nervous about. It's incredibly taboo. I had a lot sort of come up for me. I'm a married woman. What does this mean? I had a lot come up as far as being independent from Liam. But when I felt like ready and excited about it, I reached out to a close friend of ours and I told her this, and she said, I've got just the person. He's so lovely. He's been a previous partner of mine. Liam and him would get along really well. And before you know it, we went out for drinks, the three of us, and just hit it off so well. And to this day, we're such good friends with him. Yeah, it's just like a wonderful connection, like a friendship connection, but there's still that chemistry between, at that time, there was that chemistry between him and I, and it was just really fun and playful and quite taboo to be going on dates with somebody who wasn't my husband.
So you were, okay. You were pivoting at this point between monogamous world and your monogamous friends. But it sounds like you were veering very much towards non-monogamous people that you were meeting.
We still have all of our monogamous friends as well. We're not moving away from that world. We just are meeting some really awesome quality people along the way in the non-monogamous space.
And it's also amazing. You think you only know monogamous people, but then when you start to have these conversations, it's like, oh, okay, you do your relationship a little bit differently. We have this perception that, everyone just takes monogamy as a granted, like this is what you are. And because we don't have these conversations, which we're trying to normalize through all of Abbey's work with Evolving Love Project, we're trying to normalize these conversations so people feel comfortable to have these chats with their friends, and then their friends go, oh, actually, my husband and I, we're friends with the neighbors next door, and it's kind of fun. But it kind of normalizes and takes away that stigma.
Up next, Abbey and Liam talk about jealousy. Yes, it happens in non-monogamy. And I asked them why they chose to get married and what vows they made.
Making a promise to have fidelity or be in a certain way, in my early 20s, I might feel different when I'm in my early 50s. Like I'm sort of making a promise on behalf of a future version of myself who I haven't even met yet.
Stay with us. What I'm curious about, I think, is how your monogamous friends who are vanilla how they took this new foray, or your family, who I gather are very traditional also in their approach to relationships. How did they take your emerging foray into this world?
We told my parents first. My parents have always known that I have my own mind with things. They were not surprised. They love Liam. The initial feelings, when I told my mum, she said, "Are you two okay? I love Liam. I don't want another son-in-law." People can sort of go
I don't want
to
multiple
those
son-in-laws
feelings.
at the same
multiple
time.
It's okay. I don't want multiple mother-in-laws.
Right.
I've got an amazing mother-in-law. Those sorts of conversations came up. But then when I really explained the situation and said, Liam and I, we are anchored emotionally in together. We have a deep love between us. None of that has changed. We actually feel like we do have nearly all of the benefits of being in a monogamous relationship, except we do have this other aspect of our relationship that sort of rides alongside that as well. So that was really good. And then when we told Liam's mum and dad, that was because we started a podcast about non-monogamy.
Right.
And with my writing, I have a Substack writing I share on Instagram, on my Evolving Love Project Instagram about this. And it's a public Instagram. And, more and more people are following my writing. So we wanted to own that narrative and let our close friends and family know.
Some of my friends were really interested in those initial conversations. Like, these are friends that I've had for, over a decade. And some of the questions that they came out with, like, I remember telling one of my Australian friends who was visiting us in New York, and we were walking down the middle of the road. He says, "Does that mean you can go up to that girl and just have sex with her straight away?" And I was like, "Of course not. That's insane." There was this kind of misconception that it was like this free for all, this bacchanalian kind of wildness that we were just moving through the world, just collecting partners. I think those were kind of the initial things that we had to dispel with some of our monogamous friends. But all of our monogamous friends were kind of unsurprised. They were kind of like, "Well, we know you guys are, have a really close connection. It kind of makes sense that you're moving into this type of thing from a sense of real strength, and you have a deep love for each other. And you're always," some of our friends, when we told them, they go, "Oh, well, we were trying to figure out why you are so happy all the time." You're always so cheerful.
We're pretty cheeky.
Maybe there's a reason for this cheerfulness.
But along the way, before you had learnt the art of compersion, there must have been hiccups of jealousy or envy, or a feeling sometimes that you might lose a part of Liam, or Liam that you might lose a part of Abbey to another person, because a sexual connection is can be such a spiritual and sacred one, which is why I think your ideas are so challenging to people. How did you navigate those, and who had those the worst, or did neither of you?
I would say that I probably had some of those fears more than Liam did. I'm so happy in our relationship and in the non-monogamous relationship, that we had sharing together. And it was when we started to date separately, I was a little bit like, we're sort of entering new terrain here. What is coming up for me with this? Because I definitely had some fears, but it was really interesting because alongside some jealousy or some fear with that, the compersion was still there. The compersion is still really strong. It's actually really interesting, the things that can come up by being non-monogamous. For me, it's like amazing opportunities to sort of look in and see where that's coming from. It's like if I am having some jealousy or something come up, it always sort of comes back to a fear of losing Liam. And so from that, it's like we then go into those conversations. I'm saying, I'm a little bit nervous about this or what's happening. And then we always, we take a pause or we pull back, like we never want to move into anything that feels uncomfortable for either of us. Like if there's something that feels uncomfortable, we feel really comfortable to pull the brakes on it and to just say, we're just going to like sit on this for a while and talk about it. And like we're also not stuck with being non-monogamous as well. It's not our entire identity. It's just something that we have decided to share and talk and write about, but it's not our entire world. And so I think we have had big periods of monogamy in our relationship as well. Falling pregnant was a monogamous time for us. Having the family time and, newborn life and all of that. It's like as people in relationships, there's always going to be external factors that impact on how we can show up for each other as well. So, just being really communicative about that, and also making it a really safe space to say, actually something doesn't feel quite right. So let's just really talk about that and pull the brakes.
And is the understanding between you that if one of you's feeling a bit, obviously when you're postpartum and you've had a baby or you're breastfeeding, whatever's happening, you're feeling different within your body. So when one of you is feeling a bit off about it, is the understanding that you discuss that and you both pull out?
Of course.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's always this constant communication, like Abby was saying, but the postpartum thing that you bring up, Kate, was really interesting because that initial time, obviously we're just completely absorbed with parenthood, and Abby's this incredible mother and breastfeeding and tending for a newborn just so beautifully. But there came a time, after a little while where I thought what an empowering thing it would be to remind Abby of her amazing autonomy, being this sexual being, being this incredible woman, just being so empowered, not from, necessarily just being non-monogamous, but also from being this new kind of moving into motherhood in this incredible way, and knowing that she still has this sexual aspect of her being, and gently encouraging her, saying, if you'd like to explore, if you'd like to go on a date, with someone, I want to encourage you, just because, we've entered into kind of parenthood, you're still this amazing woman, you still have this incredible sense of self. And I really wanted to kind of uplift Abby and allow her to kind of embrace being a mother, but also having this other aspect of her life.
Because there is a possibility, it's happened to many women I know, once you embark on childbirth and then child rearing, that sexual side of yourself can actually end up desiccated like a piece of dried coconut,
Yes.
How were you when Liam started to reactivate you in that sense?
Motherhood is beautifully consuming, as it should be. It was around the 6-month mark. It was actually that the first partner that I had connected with independently in 2016. So we had our son in 2018. But that partner, he had moved to London, but he was back in New York, and it was around the time when I was 6 months postpartum. And Liam was so beautiful. Liam just said, it's okay. Why don't you just go and have a drink with him for 2 hours, just downstairs. I'll have the baby. Just go. You'll have a lovely catch up, get dressed, put on some heels.
Take off your bathrobe.
Go and do that.
And your slippers.
Exactly. Just do that. And it felt like such a big thing. It was actually really amazing because it was just a couple of hours that were just for me, and I was just able to sort of slip into, who I was before motherhood, and I knew that our son was totally safe with his dad, and just to be away and enjoy that company and be in that moment of desire and flirtation, and to then come home and tell Liam about that, and just feeling so giggly and just going, I can't believe I just went and, had a drink with him and it was so fun and we made out, and and Liam was like, that's amazing, tell me all about it, so it's just that's sort of how it looks for us. It's not sort of then coming back and being in sort of the emotional trenches together, sort of it comes with ease for us as far as how we can support and hear each other in those situations.
Two things I imagine may have been hurdles for people who are otherwise accepting of the way that you were choosing to live your relationship. Firstly, when you got married, how were people about you embarking on this traditional notion with your non-traditional ideas?
We hadn't told many people.
We did have non-monogamous friends at our wedding, but I think at that stage it was kind of this separate existence, this separate life. It was like we had our monogamous friends, and then we had this non-monogamous community, which was back in New York, and we got married back in Australia. So we never really had to broach running in the face of traditional, views of marriage and all that kind of stuff until we became more public. And then we did have some people going, well, why would you get married? And this was something that came up after the project.
Yes. Why did you get married?
I think marriage holds a lot of beauty in a lot of different ways. We're personally not religious. We're I would say we're kind of agnostic, spiritual. I guess we believe in that type of thing. But I think marriage is a beautiful statement of love and commitment. And I have this extremely strong commitment for Abby. that I hold very dearly. And I think marriage in a lot of ways, is a beautiful way to celebrate that. And I think this kind of really deep sense of commitment, there's a lot of beauty in that. And whether that's a beautiful monogamous relationship, a misconception of sometimes some of the stuff that Abby and I talk about is that we're on this crusade to make everyone non-monogamous, which is absolutely not the case at all. I think there's a lot of beauty in monogamy. I think there's a lot of beauty in all different relationship styles as long as they're very intentional. That was what we were saying to people who said, well, just don't even get married. Like, why bother getting married? Why are you having this big party? And
what vows did you say? And which ones didn't you say?
I don't think we said that we will forsake all others.
Right.
Or if we did, maybe we gave each other a wink.
Right.
To love and support each other. And, I can't remember specifically what they were, but, one thing I will say about marriage, I feel like when Liam and I got married, we're in our early mid-20s, and the promises that we make when we're in our early mid-20s, I'm going to love you forever, or I'm never going to be with anybody else or anything like that. I do feel like I love Liam forever. We have a very, very deep bond with one another, and that's something that we cherish very deeply. But I'm also very aware that as we go through life, there might be many different versions of us that show up. Making a promise to have fidelity or be in a certain way, in my early 20s, I might feel different when I'm in my early 50s. Like I'm sort of making a promise on behalf of a future version of myself who I haven't even met yet. So I think for Liam and I, we've always wanted to have a relationship where we are on a journey together, we're unfolding together as a couple, and we're actually not afraid to embrace this change. When we first met, I had complete tunnel vision for Liam, and it didn't sort of cross my mind that we would be in a non-monogamous relationship. But having this, these open lines of communication and this understanding that as we go through life, we will change, things will happen, things will come up, but we want to be on that journey together and sort of honor that, even if it looks radically different to what nearly everybody else in our social circles are doing, and that's actually okay. Like we are consenting, responsible, safe adults who are, just doing it our way, and that's okay.
This wasn't the end of my conversation with Abbey and Liam. I kept chatting to them, and in part 2 of this conversation, I had about 1 million more questions. I asked them about parenting as a non-monogamous couple.
There's also misconceptions with non-monogamous people that, their house is like a sex party, or that it's, the non-monogamy is happening like all the time, every day, and it's like, of course it's not. With our son, he's 5 now, but he is going to grow up, and one day he's going to know that he has parents who love him, who keep him safe. Our messaging to him, and we've already started this with him, is, love can look many different ways.
And in their situation, it's not just all about having sex with other people. The chemistry has to be there.
A couple of years ago, Liam started dating a really lovely woman, but the sexting chat from her and the communication wasn't quite there. And I said, look, babe, I just don't think you two are compatible.
Liam and Abbey also told me why they think some monogamous relationships fail or affairs happen. To listen to part 2, just click the link in the show notes. The executive producer of No Filter is Kimberly Bradish. And I'm Kate Langbroek. Thanks for having us in your ears.